Hi beautiful ladies, welcome back to my channel. So today I want to talk to you about JLo and some lessons that we can learn from her and her life. If you haven't heard already, JLo recently announced her divorce from her husband Ben Affleck due to a number of things. One of those being that he was recently photographed in the company of another woman, one of his ex-girlfriends that he was with before he met JLo. And just JLo stating that he had erratic behavior and mood swings were some factors that led up to her decision to file for divorce. It's also important to note that JLo is an entertainer, so take everything that she does and says and everything that goes on in her life and any other entertainer, including social media influencers, take everything that they do with a grain of salt because there's so much more that goes on behind the scenes in people's lives that contribute to the outcomes that we end up seeing. It's like an iceberg effect. We only see the little tip, a small percentage of what's going on when the mass and the bulk of the situation happens behind closed doors and behind the scenes that we don't get to see. So take that with a grain of salt. Also know that because JLo's an entertainer and she's therefore wealthy, she'll be fine. But common people like you and I will not get away with making the same mistakes that she has made. Learn from other people's mistakes. See what other people go through so that you can learn what to do and what not to do. Also, it's important to note that celebrities like JLo get paid from exposure. So all press is good press, including bad, because it gets people engaged, it gets people talking, it gets more likes and views and whatnot. And these celebrities end up benefiting by extension. And sometimes they even get brand deals. So sometimes people do things on purpose and they stage things so they can get paid. But one thing that I noticed about the JLo situation is that you should not center having a man in your life as the main factor of your identity. And now on this channel, I do not demonize heterosexual relationships with men. I do not demonize women getting into relationships with men. I do believe that if done correctly, being in a relationship can be beneficial to you, can be beneficial to both parties, but you need to do things strategically and essentially choose correctly and vet correctly so that you do not end up kissing a bunch of frogs when you really do deserve better. And in JLo's situation, she's been with multiple men, and we could easily say, well, all these men are trash, and all these men, it didn't work out for her, even though she's been engaged 5 times. There's a joke saying that she's on Thanos's level because she has a ring for every finger. But you need to recognize that JLo is the common denominator. JLo is the one who has been present in every single situation. And, after maybe the first or second or third mistake, you would have to maybe get away with it. But beyond that, you really have to be honest with yourself and say, okay, what am I doing here that is wrong? Okay, and how can I change my actions so that I can ultimately change the trajectory of where my life is going? And if you find yourself constantly in relationships that fail, I'm talking about romantic relationships here, not so much friendships. If you're finding yourself in relationships that do not last long, or they stop at a certain point, or they always kind of end up in drama, you need to look within yourself because you are the one who gets to decide who enters your life and who doesn't. And if you're constantly finding yourself in drama or attracted to people who are drama, it's because you're letting it in and you're attracted to these things. And so whether you realize it or not, you subconsciously entertain these relationships. And so you need to take a step back. And this comes with being self-aware and learning the art of introspection and truly being honest with yourself. And a lot of people are not honest. They'd much rather blame other people because it's easier to cast blame than to take ownership and do the inner work, which is very difficult and tedious because you're working to literally do a 180 in your life. You're looking to literally change one thought process. Sometimes you've held that process for decades and completely undo those habits and live a new life essentially. But if you are looking to have a better life, essentially, you need to practice the art of introspection and truly being honest with yourself. And that doesn't mean that you need to self-depreciate and beat yourself up, but you need to show yourself tough love essentially and say, look, clearly these last couple of relationships haven't worked, and I need to identify why I am attracted to these relationships. I need to take ownership so that I can pinpoint it and choose better for myself, essentially. And a lot of women have these issues, especially women. A lot of exoticals do. Anyone can go through a toxic situation, but I find more so women of African descent, regardless of the amount of admixture that you have, typically find themselves in these tumultuous relationships because family structure is very fractured within the Black community. And so that plays out in a lot of different ways. A lot of men find themselves womanizing and going from woman to woman as a way to kind of get that false sense of security that they wish that they had growing up. And the same is true for a lot of women. They tend to attach themselves to toxic situations because it's what's familiar to them. They grew up in a toxic situation. Maybe their dad was in and out of their lives or just not there at all. Maybe their mom kind of just had partners coming and going. And so that's something that's familiar to you. But a part of breaking cycles is to identify these habits and choose to do the opposite, no matter how hard it is. Another thing that's important to note is that having a pretty face and nice body isn't enough to keep a man around or to save your career or your relationship. Okay? Eventually, people will get tired of a pretty face. And I've spoken about this before, which is why you need to be a well-rounded individual. You can't just rely on your physical appearance. Physical appearance is a cutting edge that will get you further than people who do not have it, but it can only go so far. And if that's the only thing that you are relying on, you're going to plateau after some point. And now look at JLo. JLo is beautiful. JLo is 55 years of age and she is fit. Her skin is immaculate, wrinkle-free. You could tell obviously she's an older woman, but she has aged gracefully, okay? And obviously she's gotten some work done, but she has been able to find doctors, estheticians, whatever, who can tailor a skincare routine, cosmetic procedures that will help to enhance her looks and not take it away and ultimately botch her beauty. But if you see again the amount of relationships that JLo has had, her looks did not save her relationship essentially. Okay, these men that she's been with, including Ben Affleck, obviously they probably knew that they were with one of the most beautiful women in the world, in my opinion, in entertainment at least. But eventually, when it's not nourishing to your spirit, to your soul, there's no substance, eventually you get tired. That's why a lot of wealthy people, when they don't really have anything else to work for, like the common person, they have goals and ambitions and things like, I want to have a better life for my family, for example, that drives them and motivates them. But once you've achieved that and you've amassed a certain amount of wealth, sometimes you find a lot of wealthy people engaging in very harmful behaviors in order to satisfy that desire for fulfillment. These individuals, clearly, Ben Affleck, if the rumors are true, stepped out on his relationship with one of the most beautiful women because, and not to place all the blame on her, but again, common denominator, there was probably some character traits that were lacking that are essential to maintaining a healthy relationship, and eventually enough was enough, especially if you're trying to be in a relationship where more than superficial and more than physical. After a while, the physical attributes, it's just like, whatever, I need more. I'd much rather cut my losses and be with someone who is less famous, less attractive, but who is wholesome, who is peaceful, etc., than to be in a relationship with a pretty face, but like a broken, empty soul, essentially. Another important thing to note is that people can see through BS, so it's very important to be yourself. And now a most recent critique of JLo's is a lot of people have accused her of being phony. One of the things was the whole Jenny from the block thing. People were saying, oh, she's not from the block. she's not from the Bronx, OGs who've been around for a while have said, I don't recognize this woman. It could be that maybe she just didn't run in those circles and she kept to herself. But even with the music, or just trying to lately put on a persona that makes her look, that tries to like make her stay relevant or like put her back to when she was popular in the early 2000s. And it's like what people like has changed over the years. And it's like instead of trying to appeal to the masses by being someone that you're not, maybe you're trying to adopt popular personas, that current pop stars have. It's like, why not bask in your legacy? Why not bask in the persona that you created some decades ago that caused people to love you? Another important thing to know is that it's important to keep quiet about your life so that you can make your mistakes in private and have more grace. And this is one thing that Beyonce has mastered. So as an exotical, take it from a fellow exotical such as Beyonce and keep your mouth shut. You're setting yourself up for failure when you allow yourself to be placed under a microscope, especially if you're a beautiful woman and especially if you're an exotical. Maybe you have an identity that is controversial, if you will. People are not going to show you as much grace. People are going to expect perfection from you because they think that you think that you're perfect and they also think that you're perfect. And so they expect perfection. As I said before, JLo is a beautiful woman. She's a celebrity. She's talented. There are people who are preying on her downfall. And there are people who will also prey on your downfall because you're a pretty woman and they like to see pretty women humbled. So because you're human, every single human being on this earth is going to face challenges in life. And so that's why it's important to practice the art of being stealth and being private, so that when you do come upon hard times, sometimes these challenges are outside of our control, you can just gracefully and quietly be able to manage it and not have to deal with the added pressures of public scrutiny, family scrutiny, community scrutiny, etc. And you end up remaining on top and looking like you're on top because other people outside of your situation wouldn't be the wiser. And when you're the type of person who's not in some drama and people only see you winning or they just don't really know what's going on with you at all, if someone tries to tarnish your name, people will be more likely to defend you and will be less likely to believe what that person says, because it's like, well, I haven't really seen any evidence of this person exhibiting behavior that you're saying. Like, she's not messy, she keeps to herself. Like, I don't get it. The same thing I talk about Beyonce probably in almost every video on this channel, because she's a great example. Like, people come to Beyonce's defense without Beyonce even having to open her mouth to confirm or deny things, because she's not messy. Okay? She's not in the media talking about anything. She has ironclad security. So like, you don't know what's going on in her life. If any photos from like paparazzi, they had to take it at like 1,000 times zoom, because she has found a way to not allow people to get too close, especially when she's with her children, to try to paint a story or weave a web of lies, if you will. Beyonce doesn't post anything on social media. She does not do interviews anymore. All she does is put out music, or if it's anything else business related, like a hairline, clothing line, she's trying something to make $1. And the only time you hear from her is when she's opening her mouth to sing, or if she is filming a documentary so she can get paid from that, or she's filming an ad where she's getting paid. When you are in the spotlight and you're constantly making mistakes and constantly falling on your face and everyone kind of sees it, eventually you're going to end up going through an identity crisis as you get older, because you didn't take the time to learn who you are. You didn't take the time to make honest mistakes, as I call it. So, you go through life, you have good intentions, and you make mistakes that a regular human being would make. You learn from it and you move on. Those are honest mistakes, okay? You had good intentions to do good. Things may not have worked out and you failed, but you learn from that and you move on. People who make People like JLo who make dishonest mistakes, if you will, are people who kind of just, they don't really have any plans for their lives. They kind of just they kind of go through life willy nilly. And even though they may have success in one area of their life, doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to have success in other areas of their life. So even though they may appear to be successful in their careers, in their businesses outwardly, a lot of times all that they have, and behind the scenes again, like their lives are usually tumultuous and full of drama. And one example of this was Blac Chyna, who we now know as Angela White. She kind of was in the whole video vixen era. She was known for being ratchet, you know, having run-ins with the Kardashians, getting herself into fights, having to publicly go through a troubled relationship with her mom. But Blac Chyna kind of took the opportunity to say, you know what, I don't want to keep going through life like this. I want to have a better life for myself. And so she took those lessons and she learned from them quietly, reflected on them quietly, and then came out as a better individual. And she didn't announce it. Okay, Blac Chyna is a good example of what you can do when you previously, like, all hope is not lost when you make mistakes if you have a trajectory like JLo and others. And even though JLo may not be going through an identity crisis per se, there are people who have similar stories like JLo's. It may not be as explicit. JLo's story is a little bit more implicit because she's not ratchet. But people like Amber Rose, for example, and Brittney Renner, like now you're seeing a shift in these women's identities from like one extreme to the other because they're trying to make up for lost time, if you will. I guess the time that that their peers took to build their identities and build a positive image for themselves, now they're working double time to try to restore that. And they're failing miserably because they're going from one extreme to the other. Like Amber Rose used to be like the face of the slut walk, and now she's like pandering to Republicans, hoping to score a white Republican rich husband, if you will. Like, let's just be honest, that's why she's there. Brittney Renner now apparently converted to Islam, but like she's wearing like a hijab on her Instagram page, but then she still has photos of her booty cheeks on the same Instagram page. So it's like major identity crisis where you're trying to scramble to say, okay, let me fix my image. Like I messed up. I don't want to continue to be associated with this. Let me kind of fix my image. And even though JLo isn't doing this, the patterns are similar in that she constantly finds herself in tough situations, and the average person ends up finding themselves like scrambling to fix their image. So for the common person, that may look like substance abuse. That may look like hopping from relationship to relationship. You may know of a friend or a family member who always has a man, and the relationships never last long, and it's always the other person's fault but never theirs. And it's like, girl, like you're the one who keeps finding yourself in these relationships. Like maybe you should look within. Or it'll look like people who are like workaholics, like they're trying to distract themselves from another area of their life that's lacking, and it ends up playing out in these unhealthy behaviors. None of us know what JLo's going through behind the scenes, but you can better believe that only one person can take so much. And when you're constantly going from failed relationship to failed relationship and it's happening so publicly, like there has to be a way that this woman is coping behind the scenes that many of us are not privy to, which is why I also stress the importance of not idolizing people's lives, because and building your own life and pedestalizing yourself and not others, centering yourself and not others. Learning, and a part of that means that you learn from other people's mistakes so that you can know what not to do. You don't have to go through the same struggle that they went through in order to learn. But you can also look at positive examples of people who may have made mistakes in the past, like Angela White, and turned their life around. Or maybe they didn't make these mistakes at all. Like maybe they came from a good family, or they had good mentors and role models who were able to show them the way. And now that we live in an age of social media where information is readily available at your fingertips, you can easily learn from people. You don't necessarily have to have a mentor if you don't have access to one, but you can definitely glean ideas from people. TikTok is a great place to glean information from people. Instagram, YouTube, you just have to find your niche, if you will, find the skill set that you're looking to learn or the information that you're looking to connect with, and allow the algorithm to do its part for you, if you will. Let me know what your thoughts are. Have you noticed this trend with JLo and similar celebrities? Have you been through something similar? What did you do to get through it? Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.